I'm going to kick it off right away and ask Barry a question, and right away he's going to hate my guts. You don't have to answer the question.
Okay.
What's Eddie Murphy really like? Barry, how many times have you been asked that question?
Thousands.
Thousands of times. I bet.
Yeah, I asked you that question when I was on Saturday Night Live. What's Eddie really like?
My skill, really, my first skill in writing was as an editor. I'm really good at rewriting. So that was what I did. Basically, the public doesn't really know how Saturday Night Live works, but basically, on Monday, you meet with the host. You talk about what the host might want to do. But Monday night, we start writing. Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, we'd have a read-through.
No, it was
Wednesday, we'd have a read-through.
Tuesday's when all the work really got done, late into the night with no-dos and whatever.
So on Wednesday, we'd have a read-through. There'd be about 35 sketches brought to read-through. The people who were in charge, Ebersol, myself, sometimes Blaustein and Sheffield, and Davey Wilson would meet, and we'd select what would go on the show. It had to do with what we thought worked in read-through and what fit together. And then the sets would start being built, and we'd start rewriting. And so there was intense rewriting to get these sketches so they'd be in place to bring to the floor. The first sketches would be the easier sketches to mount, would be brought on to the floor on Thursday to start rehearsing. On Friday, the more sets would be built, and we'd start rehearsing on Friday. But there's a lot of rewriting that went on between them.
So Monday was the first time that the staff would meet the host?
Monday.
That would be Monday.
But they knew in advance. They had to know a little bit in advance who the host was going to be, not so much?
Yeah, we'd know who the host was going to be, but we really wouldn't meet with the host at all until Monday and find out. That's where we really find out.
So do you have memories? I'm going to ask the question. Of course, you can defer if you want to. Who was the worst host that came on that you said, oh, my God, this is a disaster? And you knew it on Monday.
I can give you a few.
On Monday.
I can give you a few.
Okay.
And actually, in front of me, I have a list of hosts. I thought this would be coming.
This is your list?
Worst and best.
So I'm looking over the hosts right now.
I can give you mine.
Okay.
You want mine?
Let's see if it's the same one.
Yeah.
I would say Robert Blake was not a...
You know what? That is exactly what I'm looking at that name right now.
Wow.
And I'll tell you one thing. Well, he's dead, so...
Yeah.
I think he's dead. But
he kills people, but is he dead?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, but one of the great defenses of all time was I didn't kill that person because I had to go back to the car to get my gun.
Get my gun.
I saw him. This is what I saw him do. He took a script that one of the writers had written. He brought it to the writer and he said, you know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to use it as toilet paper.
I'm the writer.
Is that true?
It was my script.
Really?
I wrote it with Paul and Brad, but it was some thing about him being having this cockatoo that was really erudite and quoted Shakespeare. I don't remember the premise really, but he wiped his ass with it. Now, it didn't offend me. I figured, well, I'm in the big leagues now. This is what happens when they don't like your script. But it didn't endear me to him either. But he wasn't I didn't think he was great in the show.
Well, I would say
he wasn't great.
I would say it's karma where he ended up now, Gary. If he only liked sketch, things would have been different today.
Completely jealous. You've actually taken the life that I had hoped to have myself post Saturday Night Live. But first of all,
being a female.
Yeah, me being say hello to Kenny Seisler. I mean, you guys haven't met before.
Hi, Robin.
Robin, we were just, before a little bit ago, we were talking about the fact that we saw each other at the 40th reunion, which was, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And that's the first time I'd seen you in about 35 years.
Oh, stop it.
No, it's true. I met you 40 years ago at Saturday Night Live.
Oh my God. I know, Gary. It's a long time.
It has been a long time. Now, here, I want to talk about that. Kenny, I'm not trying to, the Saturday Night Live stuff is stuff that a lot of our audience is really interested in. And we've had lots of people on the show. Piscopo said he's going to do it. I have to tell you a little story. I got there with Brad and Julia, and we did this monkey show improv from our stage show. You're laughing already. And I remember you looking at me with an almost maternal sadness.
Oh,
like,
no.
oh, you poor baby, that you had to go through that.
Oh, that's nice to know.
Well, I
wasn't sneering.
admired you so much because first of all, I loved the Whiners, but I loved SCTV. So you were a big star to me. So I really wanted to be on your, I wanted to be, someone you admired. I never, we didn't get to work together that much.
No.
One day, I did a thing called 4 Minutes to Live that Andy Breckman wrote, where I'm a guy that got a diagnosis that I'm going to die in 4 minutes, right? And I get stuck in an elevator. A movie piece that was in the show. Piscopo hated it. He called it 4 minutes too long. After the rehearsal show, I passed your dressing room, and Catherine O'Hara was in there. Of course, we'll talk about Catherine, one of your dearest friends, was sitting in there, and you came to the door and said, Gary, that was fantastic. And Catherine said, Gary, you're such a good actor. One of the few highlights of my Saturday Night Live career was that moment, which you don't remember. But anyway, your affirmation meant a lot to me.
Was I drunk? Was I drunk?
Yeah, you surely were, because it was before the air show.
Okay, it was before the what?
The air show. So we were all throwing it back by that time.
Oh my God.
Well,
Can I ask a question though?
Yeah.
Did people imbibe before a live show?
No, not really.
I certainly did.
I didn't.
Did.
What about?
Look, you watch that Johnny Cash show. I am hammered.
Oh.
For real?
Oh yeah, for real. I don't think I've had a drink since though. But,
Because of the Johnny Cash, though? You heard that train coming around the bend?
Don't you remember when weren't we all on stage? Were you there for that?
That's a year before me, Robin.
Okay, so I might have been sober. No, I was sort of semi-sober.
What about pot? Were people high for the live show?
Drugs going around.
Right.
But not Gary.
No, not Gary. No, not Gary.
I was not concerned about Gary, but there was, yeah.
The cocaine era preceded us, I think, didn't it?
It did.
It was kept away from me.
Yeah, I think it did.
Well, Robin, so like I said, I loved the Whiners, which is, I'm sure people bring that up to you as ad nauseum the way they mentioned Donnie and Marie with me. But the Whiners was really clever, I thought, for a one-joke premise. Where did that come from?
Well, it really just came from Joe and I walking around the 18th floor, whining about nobody writing for us. So it was nobody's writing us. So we just kept building on it. And I thought, I'm going to write the characters. So I went home and I wrote up, I remember writing it up on yellow foolscap. And an interesting story. I wrote it up on yellow foolscap, handed it in, how you used to have to do it early morning. And I went in to get my sides, my pages for the read through on Wednesday, and it wasn't there. They hadn't typed it up. So I went into Bob Tischer and I said, "Where's the Weiner sketch I wrote?" And he said, "Well, it doesn't have any jokes on it." I said, well, it's like you have to hear it. It's like Joe and I playing these characters. You have to hear it. So I talked him in to putting it into the read-through.
That's interesting. Because I could see reading it and not understanding the characters. It would be like, well, what's this about? Two people show up at a laundromat and talk about their lawn. But what is that?
The thing is that they didn't actually whine. They would but they weren't really complainers. They just made it sound like they were complaining. Like, I can't eat that. I've got diverticulitis.
I can't eat that. I have diverticulitis, right?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that a poor man's version?
Which I have now. But anyway, that's enough.
Well, now, Robin, were you taking advantage? We wrote most of the stuff, Kenny, that we did ourselves. Now, of course, there were writers, and they were wonderfully generous at times. But I would say a lion's share of what you and I did, we had to write ourselves because we weren't Eddie Murphy, right? I never got a writing credit. Did you? Because you're a bona fide writer.
I went in the second year. and I went in to apply as a writer, and I had a stack of scripts that had made air the year before. So I had more scripts making air than some of the writers did. So they had to hire me as a writer.
I wasn't that smart because I had a lot of scripts that I could have presented like that, but I was so afraid of just keeping my job on camera that I never wanted to rock the boat.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, because they needed writers for one of the cast members the last year I was there, and I wouldn't give up my credit. So, yeah.
So instead of 14 cents for a rerun, you're probably making 24 cents.
Yeah, I know. Don't you love those checks?
I got a check for 34 cents the other day.
Do you have like a worse memory of one of the shows you did where you went, oh my God, this is going horrible, or where everybody just lost control and started laughing? Was there a particular episode or sketch that brings back memories of being, that didn't go well?
Well, I would say like I regretted the Johnny Cash show, as I said, being
What you
hammered.
remember of it?
Oh, right.
What I remember of it, was there anything where I would start laughing? I remember I would always be looking in the monitor. And I remember one time Mary having to do this to me because we were on camera, and I was kind of like watching myself on the monitor. I'm looking pretty good.
What about you, Gary? Do you have a particular memory where it was like, this is either we're dying out here, or this is hysterical?
It was the Roy Scheider show, and he plays a scalper, and I'm a guy that goes up to him, and I have the setup line, and I don't remember what it was, but I said the opposite of what the setup was supposed to be, so his payoff made no sense whatsoever.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
He gave me a look on live television with daggers in his eyes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I carry it with me, and I blanked out the moment, because I never want. I think I cut it out of the tape. Yeah.
Oh no.
Those things happen. It's live television.
Yeah, I really can't. I haven't given that much thought. I'm sorry. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I do have a story.
You can always contact us later if you come up with something.
Okay.
Well,
there used to be somebody, and I won't name names, one of the cast, who's
not present,
who would come into my office, close the door, and rant and rail about Gary Kroger and how cutthroat you were, how you were undermining him. And he would go on and on, and I would have to come to your defense, Gary, and go, we're talking about Gary Kroger? You
know who this is, Gary?
Yes, of course I do.
Gary
this actor, whose
Kroger.
initials are JB, for some reason decided that I was the person most likely to take his stuff. For whatever irrational reason, because we're nothing alike. His last name rhymes with Alushi. We're nothing alike. And now he's since apologized to me. He came up to me in a restaurant.
He hasn't.
Years and years and years ago.
Oh, thank God, Gary.
I was at a restaurant in Santa Monica, and Jim is the other part of his name, came up to me and said, sorry.
Wait, I'm still trying to piece it together.
Oh, you aren't really.
No, of course not. Okay.
And he said, Kroger, I was an asshole, and I'm sorry. And yeah, I had some animosity because he thought he should do Springsteen when I was obviously much better. There are things that I did, Julio Iglesias, that he wanted to do. He just made me his foil for no rational reason.
No.
And I had some...
So irrational, Gary.
I had some animosity, and then he said, I'm sorry, and it all went out the window. I've seen him since. I saw him at the 40th, and he was a pal.
Oh, that is so great to hear. I can't tell you.
I've
always thought about that, and just like, and actually on what's her name, Tina Fey's show, there's kind of that thing happening between two of the characters on her show.
Oh, 30 Rock, is that the show?
30 Rock, yeah.
Okay.
I can't, but oh God.
Well,
Gary.
and not to belabor this, but that's one of the things I remember the most is he. Look, Kenny hates hearing this, but people will come on the show and say, hey, you know what, Kroger, I got to tell you, you were a really nice guy. You don't hate hearing that, but people do say it. And I've always prided myself on being a nice guy. It's not that hard to be. He saw it as an act. He saw it as a ploy in which to get on everybody's good side. And I said, if that was working, wouldn't I be in more sketches or something? It didn't work being a nice guy at all. At all. But that's what he thought. He thought I was full of shit.
Oh, God, he did.
Do you follow SNL now?
Yeah, occasionally if I'm up, I do follow it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice disclaimer. If I'm up. I'm not up at that time ever anymore.
And, I don't tape things anymore.
Right. Nobody does.
I don't think
it's
we
all
call
on
it tape
YouTube
anymore.
the next day anyhow.
The last time I taped something, it was called You Tape Something. Well, Barry, when you got there, because look, when I got there in '82, a Blaustein Sheffield script was the gold standard. It was the Tiffany. And it was largely an Eddie Murphy.
That's why the show was almost off the air.
well, okay. So how did the Sheffield Eddie Murphy relationship begin? First of all, how did it start with David? This country boy from Mississippi comes in.
David was one of the. David and I were two of the last writers hired, and I went to a read through. This Dave hadn't been hired yet. Went through a read through, and some guy. Sent some stuff in, and Gene asked me what I thought of it, and I really liked the stuff. I thought it was really good, and he got to the show, and everybody was stabbing each other in the back, and why should the show be on the air? And
wow,
this and blah 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 blah.
So this is busting. Your bubble is bursting, right? You're getting a dream job.
Everybody's going. I don't need this job. I don't need this job. Who cares? And I'm going, I need this job. This is my big break. I got to make something out of it. And Dave was older too, and we were similar minds, and we just started writing together.
But you guys really, I mean, from the little, I did, he's a Mississippi boy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
He's like a Southern gentleman kind of guy.
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, I don't know about that either. But I think it also said that he went to Oxford.
Oxford, Mississippi.
Oh, Oxford, Mississippi. So I read that.
Very good. But let's not take anything away. David is a well-educated, extremely nice human being. One of the best that I've ever known. Well, so you guys are writing together now. When did the Eddie and how did the Eddie relationship? And again, I keep going back to my experience because you and David had his voice and trust. How did that develop?
What happened is Eddie was a featured player, and the original cast was not setting the world on fire. And so we thought, why don't we try? And Eddie was very quiet. Eddie's, can be shy, very shy. Yeah. And we thought, well, this guy can't be any worse than what we're presenting. And my dad had sent me an article about a newspaper article where a court in Ohio ruled that every high school basketball team had to have at least one white player on it. And so we gave this to Eddie, and we talked about it. And Eddie came up with something, edited with him, and he appeared on the air on Update, and you could tell he was fantastic. And then we continued. We started writing all together. Sometimes he pitched an idea. Sometimes we pitch an idea to him, and no one else was writing for him. Still at time because they're going, he was a featured player, and I'm like,
the stars aligned.
They really did because you have different. Although Eddie's from Long Island, right? So you're from Long Island, right? David's from Mississippi, but all kinds of very different backgrounds for these three people to come together and all share the same comedic sensibilities. Kind of interesting. Barry, I'm going to assume you're Jewish, right? So you have a Jewish sensibility. Which is very different than, maybe David Sheffield's, but apparently not. So that's kind of interesting.
And I don't even know where this question is going, but here, okay, David's a white guy from Mississippi. You're a white Jewish guy from Long Island, and Eddie Murphy is a black kid. But yet there was a chemistry of ideas and language. Can you, illuminate that a little bit?
You guys must have even made fun of it when you were all together, right?
No, no. I never go refer to Eddie
as a black
No, I'm
kid.
not saying that, but just kind of, joke around with friends.
No, we don't talk about our differences.
That's interesting.
Really?
Okay.
And
Here's the biggest difference. Eddie's a gazillionaire, and we're not.
back in the old days, I would put my ear up to your closed door where you and David were in there,
Sick
riffing
person.
characters, and you did dialogue and dialects and everything.
Were you looking through the keyhole?
I was trying to, but I would put my ear in there and I would wax whimsically. If only they were writing something for me. And I say that out of respect for the fact that your writing was so good. It literally went from the room to the floor. Obviously, there were changes and rewrites.
All right, but let's talk specifically. James Brown's Hot Tub.
Okay, James Brown's Celebrity Hot Tub was written after we left the show. It was written, the day was over, I got into a hot tub. And I went, ow! And that's what it sounds like James Brown. It was written
too hot, not tub.
And then we came up with James Brown's Celebrity Hot Tub.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
Well, and again, that was one of the first sketches I saw, because that was early in '82, that I went, oh my God, the guy's a genius. He can turn anything into a physical
Well, let's specifically tell me, what were some of the other bits that you guys did that became iconic? I mean, he's known for, I don't know, did you guys do the Gumby? Was that you?
We did all the Gumbies. We
did all the
Velvet Jones.
I mean, where the hell
the
did that
Assassination of Buckwheat.
Assassination of Buckwheat was my favorite piece.
Well, and I think that's the best piece that the program has ever produced, was the series of examinations of American media that you guys put into the Assassination of Buckwheat. I remember I even got to play a Buckwheat performer who, because a number of them arose after Buckwheat was dead. We were doing Vegas acts as Buckwheat performers. It was genius. It was genius. And I remember just being in awe, and I was happy to be there. Like, holy cow, I'm in the presence of... Eddie would come on after 48 hours and then Trading Places and then Beverly Hills Cop. He would enter a sketch, and the room, the energy just went... There'd be a pause, and then there'd be applause. It was like John Wayne on the Lucy Show. He comes through the door, and it's like, oh my God.
Didn't it motivate the other writers now to try to compete with you and David Sheffield to get him material?
Some did. I know it was, when they did it and worked, it was great.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
I always felt you guys were very generous. It didn't feel competitive. You had your place, and it was secure, but you were very generous. You were very kind to me.
Well, you were easy to work with, and there was no one on the show who didn't like Gary, especially Eddie.
Well, that's kind. That's very sweet.
Do you watch Saturday Night Live now?
I watch it almost every week.
You do. And comments, feelings, things? It's.
I think like all times, some weeks are great, some weeks aren't great. They just did a show with Carrie Mulligan, and that was, I think, one of the best shows they ever did.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, Carrie Mulligan, I mean, she's a great actress, but you don't think we're a comedian. It's just the writing was all. Dave and I went back to Saturday Night Live.
To do the 40th.
No, right? When Eddie hosted.
Oh, that's what I meant. That's what I meant, was the Eddie hosting. Right.
Yeah.
And how was that with Eddie? How was he? Was he having a great time?
I loved the show.
I was.
It was an event.
Yeah.
I knew you guys had gone
but
back.
I got to meet Lorne. I never met him before.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
And was he gracious, or?
Yeah, he was gracious.
That's good. That's good.
He was like, way we do this show here is we do this and this. And I'm like, Lorne, I worked on the show.
Yeah. But it does seem to me that production values, the budgets now, some of these segments that they do, these, filmed pieces, they'll do a lot of film pieces. Now, production values are very high.
Oh, yeah. Well, when it's just technology has changed. When we were doing the show, Gary, you could do 4 film pieces a year.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was celluloid.
Yes.
The show was great with Eddie. I even wrote about that one on my blog. Gary Has Issues.
Yeah, I think the show is hit and miss. I think the writers, a lot more writers than we had.
A lot more cast.
A lot more cast.
Yeah.
I wish they would let. I feel bad for the cast when they always can't put celebrities and guest stars in.
Yeah.
What's your feeling what they did when they brought Elon Musk and those kind of people? Do it matter when they bring out if there was some kind of backlash?
Controversy.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have politicians on there unless they're out of office. Because I think what you're saying is you're giving them an approval. Oh, you might disagree with Trump, but he's a great guy.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
And I would say that on the other side too. I would say I don't think you should have Hillary on there. So, she's
Of course.
Mhm.
Of course. Or they're retired. We had George McGovern on, but I liked the Elon Musk. Not that I thought it was the greatest show, and he wouldn't. But I had no problem with a controversial host. That's your job, is to be
I didn't mind
controversial.
Elon Musk.
Well, the thing is, I would say when I hear, it kind of endeared me to Elon Musk, because from what I hear, what he got there, people really liked him. He was willing to be made fun of, and as long as he was able to make fun of himself, and I think it came through.
When he said he had Asperger's.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly right. Exactly.
Well, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
My hat's off to them all for that. Hey, Bear, we've taken a lot of your time today because I want to point out that you carved out
your
time
fiance just called. They're waiting for you.
You carved out time for the Gary and Kenny show, and today you are getting married.
Yes.
Married.
Congratulations.
Well, first of all, congratulations.
Yes.
I'm not sure how it worked out that you said, why didn't you postpone us?
Because I committed to you guys first.
You committed to us first.
And I put show business first, which is why the.
Do you have any other commitments today besides getting married?
What?
Dentist?
Do you have other commitments today before you get married? Do you have to go
Yes.
do other things? Oh, you do. So you have a busy day.
You are a man of integrity and honor, sir.
Thank you, Gary.
It really has been a pleasure, Barry. I want to stay in touch. Bob and I are
Yes,
staying in
I
touch,
love
and we
to stay-
haven't. And we have. I know that you have some challenge, of Parkinson's, but I got to tell you, my friend, you look great.
Watch out, Michael J. Fox. I'm going to be the face.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
There you go. But
There you
my
go.
point is, you're such a terrific human being. You're such a fighter. You're so solid. You are truly a man of integrity and great work.
Well, thank you.
So much fun, my friend.
Really a pleasure to meet you, Barry.
And if I ever run for office again, I'll call you.
Okay.
SNL, Tim.
How I ended up there?
At
Oh,
SNL.
that's just fucking ridiculous.
Okay.
I did not audition. I'm the only human being who never auditioned for Second City or Saturday Night Live. I had when I finished SNL, Second City, I had written a pilot for a show called Big City Comedy, which was a Canadian-American production. And we shot it in Orem, Utah, at the Donnie and Marie studio. And that got picked up. So I went up and I worked for a season with John Candy, the most lovable, wonderful human being. What a movable feast of a guy. And it was a blessed time. And we had, our guests were Fred Willard, Billy Crystal, Rita Moreno. Oh, it was so much fun.
Insane.
So I come back to Chicago, and this guy Ebersol comes in and he wants to take me for a drink at the pump room, and I'm telling him, he's taken over for Gene Domanian, and I'm like, I'm getting high, gin and tonics. I was like blasted, and I'm going, that Eddie Murphy, the kid, get that guy from the Domanian thing, and Piscopo, and you got to have Mary Gross, and I'm like, fucking, who am I? I'm telling him what, and then he says to me, well, I want you to do the show. And I'm like, what? What the fuck? And I'm like, I just got a job as a writer at SNL. And I'm like, holy Christ. And one drink later, he says,
Wait, you got a job as a writer from SNL? He offered you a job as a writer?
Yeah. And so about 10 minutes later, he says, are you after? I said, why wouldn't I need to be after? And he said, well, everybody in the cast has to be after it. And I said, did you just say cast? He said, yeah. I said, why do you think I hired you? And he says, I said, as a writer. And he says, you write?
But Tim, I had always heard that it was John Belushi that actually got Ebersol to take a look at you in the first place.
Well, you're jumping about 6 months because I didn't know that. Why would he hire me out of the blue? I then found out later that he had come on John Belushi's recommendation to see me perform. And that was the craziest thing, that he had seen me perform before I left. And that was the weirdest thing of all, is that I didn't find out later that it was John who had recommended me to Ebersol. I think Ebersol said, John thought you would be a good den mother for the group.
This, to me, again, you were the glue. You were the den mother of the show. You were the person that we all went to when we had a bad week. We'd close your door and cry in your office. I know I took advantage.
What was he wearing that he was the den mother?
He wore a little. But Tim, do you still have that? Is it in your office? But Tim, so then after 2 years, though, how did I survive into a third year with Marty Short and Chris Guest and Billy Crystal? And Julia came along as well, and Jim Belushi.
Yeah.
What happened there? Why wasn't Tim Kazurinsky there? I never knew. Nobody ever told me.
Well, I never sort of figured that out either. I had planned on doing one. It's an enormous task doing that show, and I was running out of steam. I thought I'll do one more year and, get the condo and I'll be done. So, and it didn't work out that way. And they cried, Niobe tears when they fired me, but they fired, cause Eddie was leaving.
Right.
They let go of, they needed
Piscopo.
money. They let go of Piscopo and me and Brad, and who else? They kept
Robin, Mary stayed.
Robin, yeah, Mary
Robin
stayed,
Duke,
and you stayed. And
Julia,
and then they brought in
Marty Short, Chris Guest, Billy
which they'd never
Crystal,
done before.
Harry Shearer,
Yeah,
Pam Stevenson.
yeah, and they were not the friendliest people at that time. It was a very weird thing when those guys came around, but all wonderfully talented people. But they had all, Billy Crystal had done soap, Marty had done SCTV, and they'd done Spinal Tap. So this was, Ebersol doing what he had to do to keep the show afloat, because Eddie was leaving. He was a very pragmatic guy, I think. So
yeah. The whole time period, all those names that you mentioned, coming in with Marty Short and Billy Crystal, those were like the catchphrase years, where everybody was like, "You got to come up with a catchphrase."
Right. Yeah.
Did you ever feel that?
I even wrote a bit for the news where I just couldn't come up with a catchphrase. I mean, because it was so prevalent. Seriously, but now
I don't feel they do that anymore on SNL, do they?
But everything goes through periods. I call it the cartoon period. Everything, Gumby was popular. We were very broad, in my view.
Yeah, but also we go back and look at those. There was a lot of funny stuff, and there were times when I, in subsequent years where it was like some things were like impressionistic, and they was like they weren't going to go for jokes, they weren't going to go for funny, and I do have to say I was really proud to be an alum of SNL when after the Trumpster got in, Kate McKinnon came out and sang Hallelujah, and it was just a brilliant moment.
It was. Tim, I'm quoting you again. You once said, "Never cut funny," and I use that all the time.
Yeah, never
cut funny. Yeah, just so and Tim, you said yes to the right woman. You married well. I was at your wedding. I was at your wedding when you and Marcia turned around. You said your final vow. You must have put on Groucho noses, and then you turned to us in the church, and I realized that you married the right woman.
That was such a great wedding.
Yes, it was.
I'm telling you.
And I remember.
From her hometown in Michigan came in, and weirdly, that week there was a special flight rate to Chicago. It was like a $50 United Airline ticket or whatever to fly to Chicago, and there was a great hotel rate. there were like 50 people from SNL at that wedding. It was like everybody came in. It was so touching and wonderful. And you know, the band played till 2 a.m.
Today it would have went viral.
Today it would have.
Let me ask you both a
It
question.
was so much fun.
Because you're both on SNL. Were on SNL. Do you watch SNL now?
Oh God, yes, yeah. Would not miss it.
I don't watch it at night though. I watch everything that's YouTube the next day. I watch all the highlights. I watch everything that's sort of recommended.
Thoughts? General thoughts?
That's what I do. I quite often, half the time, I tape them. I watch them the next day, but I always do watch them. I think for the first time in history, the women are stronger than the men, and they're tearing it up, and it's great. You know, it's what 44 years now?
It's been 44, years.
40,
yeah, it would have to be 45 years.
75, yeah. It's 45 years, yeah. And the death of Saturday Night Live has been prematurely predicted by everybody, and every new gang that comes in takes shit that they're not as good as the last group, and then they find their sea legs, and it manages to and Lorne's done a great job too.
I love the show. I have a recurring dream where I'm asked back, and knowing what I know now, I'm able to do much better than I could do back then. So you were the guy that came over from Letterman, and you immediately established yourself. Kenny, there was this thing called the Breckman pitch, and you've already gotten a piece of it. The Breckman pitch is his hand would start to move, and he would tell the entire pitch through his own laughing voice. Yeah. So you never knew what he said, but it had to have been funny.
Well, I was guaranteed with that method, I was guaranteed at least one person would laugh. Right. It was me.
Right. But would you say, because I would say that there was a Letterman brand, it was goofy existentialism, but part of our show is not just how it was done, but what's the creative process? What is the matrix in the Breckman brain? And I'll bet you used some of those Letterman sketches and you brought them over to SNL, didn't you?
Well, you're exactly right. You were probably in them. The sketches that were rejected. Yeah. I'm sure you're absolutely right. Of course, everyone recycles material, but you're exactly right. It took me a while. It took me longer than most other writers on the Letterman staff to get Letterman's voice in my head. The Letterman, when I was there, the writers were on a 13-week cycle. That is, every 13 weeks you could be either renewed or fired.
Wow.
So it was very scary. Mm-hmm. And my first 13-week cycle, we were in pre-production for most of it. I was what do you call it in baseball when you don't score? I was shut out.
Shut out.
Yeah, complete shutout. I couldn't score. I wasn't on the scoreboard. Never. I must have pitched 100 ideas, and he didn't like any of them. I really was.
Were you also writing monologue jokes?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
I had no aptitude for it. There was a guy named Jerry Mulligan.
Yeah, Mulligan.
And Steve O'Donnell later. They had a great aptitude for it, but it didn't come naturally to me. But writing ideas, submitting ideas, I was really 0 for 100, very discouraged, very scared. And then Merrill called just before the 13-week deadline and said, "You're doing fine. Don't sweat it."
That's great.
That was a great call there too. The first joke I got on Letterman was it was a desk piece. Somebody had defaced a barn. Somebody had written like Eddie in giant letters across the barn, and the cops were looking for who did it, and Letterman, and the joke was, "I'm no detective." But I'd be looking for a guy named Eddie.
Well, but that's now one of the sketches we did, and then I want to move on to post SNL stuff. But one of the sketches,
whatever you want, Gary,
which was a classic Breckman, and I was part of it, is Larry's Corner, and you are a guy, you're in that sketch, and when you laugh and drink milk, the milk comes through your nose.
Yeah.
So
it was probably the biggest laugh I've ever been part of. Yeah.
Right. The three, because nobody saw this coming, Kenny. So you've got these talk show, and there's three buddies. So I start to make fart sounds under my
arm,
under my
very highbrow.
Yeah. Very highbrow.
Yeah.
Andy's drinking milk, starts to laugh, and he had hoses put through a
geez.
bald cap, so you never knew
Yeah,
that milk was going to start pumping through his nose. And then Tim Kazurinsky's character gets so excited that he takes a glass of milk and drinks it from Andy's nose.
It's my bid for immortality right there.
Right. Wow. But that was a Breckman piece. Anyway, it was exciting to have a Breckman piece. So, and I left the show. You stayed with it for a while, obviously.
Now, were you also on it with Larry David was writing?
Oh, yeah.
And he never got a piece from, because we've talked about this with other people. Yeah. It's all the other shows that he wrote for. He never got pieces on.
I think he did get one piece on. He got a couple pieces in Dress. It was very, the other writers loved him. He wrote very...
Right, that's what I heard, yeah.
Very, very disciplined, very subtle, like very subtle pieces, very dry. And the boss then, Dick Ebersol, didn't
understand him.
Didn't get him. They weren't on the same wavelength. And a lot of the pieces that Larry David pitched and wrote at SNL became Seinfeld episodes.
Yeah.
And he wrote, if you want to hear a little story, a Larry David story, he wrote one piece where, Gary, I can't remember if you were there for that. He wrote one piece about the Flying Melindas, the family, the trapeze artists.
Yeah, I was there.
And the joke was, that the Flying Melindas, the joke was that a mafia, a gangster, approaches the Flying Melendez family, and the gangster says, I got a nephew that wants to be a trapeze artist. I want him to be in your act. And then the gangster forces him to take the nephew into the act, and the Melendez say, well, we can't just take anyone. We practice 30 hours a day for years. We can't. No, you're going to take my nephew. And then the joke was that the nephew appears, and Larry David wanted me, the writer, Andy Breckman, to play the nephew because I was dumpy looking, a little out of shape, and it was a funny visual image that I would be the nephew. And Dick Ebersol said, no, Andy can't be the nephew. We have a whole cast here. We have Gary Kroger. We have a whole assortment of actors that are dying for more airtime. You can't use a writer. And Larry David insisted that I would play the nephew, and they got into a screaming match.
Wow.
Over it, and I just cowered in the corner and embarrassed and humiliated, and to be the object of that.
How did it end? Did it get on?
It ended. I think Larry David stormed. I think Larry David quit. I think he quit numerous times. I think he quit and stormed out of the room. And the sketch did not get on. But I felt very self-conscious, as you can imagine. And because the whole sketch was about how out of shape I was, it was just the strangest feeling to me. I was proud to be asked, but also
right.
But also, I was only asked because
I always wonder when those celebrities get the call from their agent going, you've been asked to do a Weight Watchers commercial.
Your character's name before.
You're before, right, right.
Yeah.
All right. So, Andy, we saw each other, it'd be 6 years ago now, 5-6 years ago at the 40th anniversary, right? And you'd had quite a relationship with SNL all those years. But Andy, at the after party, Sarah Palin comes in. And I'm talking to Andy, and Andy suddenly says, Ms. Palin, this is Gary Kroger. He's running for Congress. He's a Democrat. And then you left.
Right?
You left. Well,
no, I said, there's Sarah Palin. Do you want to meet Sarah Palin?
I said, no.
You said yes, but you were just you didn't know how to, you were like a shy little 7th grader at a party. You didn't know how to, why would you not want to meet Sarah Palin?
I swear that what I said was, why would I meet her? I've said horrible things. I've written things about her. She's the antithesis. But anyway, you made the introduction, and she couldn't have been more charming. That's the end of the story. But later, after the party and the next day, I see you in the lobby of the hotel because you now are pitching games because you've created Uncle Andy's Toys.
Uncle Andy, it's singular. Yeah, Uncle Andy
just
Toys.
Uncle Andy
Wait,
Toys.
I'll tell you one last story, and this is another lesson, kids, if you're listening, that you can learn. So that 40th anniversary party, I wasn't cool enough to get to be offered 2 tickets. I could only get 1 ticket. So wait, what are you pointing at yourself for?
I got 2 tickets.
Oh, you're much cooler than you're at the cool table. But I was only offered 1 ticket. So I was there without Beth, without my wife. So I'm at the party, and the party starts at 2:00. It's after the show. And I'm at the party, and I say hi to Gary. I say hi to a few old friends. And then I'm always awkward at these parties. I don't drink. I'm not good at schmoozing. And so about 3:30, I get very restless. I'm there without my wife, and I leave. I just leave, right? At 3:30. So then
the afternoon.
3:30 in the morning, right? I'm only there for a couple hours.
Oh, okay.
I just have never been a party guy. But anyway, here's the lesson, kids. Jim Downey calls me the next morning. Right? Jim Downey, the writer, my friend Jim Downey. He says, "Where'd you go?" I said, "Oh, I just left 3:30. He said, at 3:40, 10 minutes later, the show began. Paul Simon, Prince,
Paul McCartney. on stage.
Doing a private concert for 10 minutes after I left. I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten how stupid I was. And so the lesson, boys and girls, is if you ever wrangle an invitation to a cool party, don't be the first guy to leave. Don't make my mistake. And I'm kicking myself ever since.